Hello, welcome to Memorial University of Newfoundland St. John's campus. The two candidates running for Executive Director of External Affairs, Communications, and Research for MUNSU are about to participate in an independently moderated debate hosted by the Muse. I'm Jake Morrow.
And I'm Laura Howells. The two candidates are Candace Sims and Noah Davis-Power. The rules of the debate have been negotiated with both candidates present and are as follows.
There will be 2 minutes of introduction for candidates to present their platforms. Next, there will be a series of up to 10 questions asked by Laura Howells. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond. After each candidate has had an opportunity to respond, the floor will be open for a maximum of 3 minutes for one-on-one debate.
The moderator reserves the right to either shorten the debate period, if necessary, or to ask a clarifying question or follow-up question, at which point candidates will have 2 minutes for further open-ended discussion.
This is a closed-door debate with only necessary crew from the Muse, the Chief Returning Officer, and the two candidates present in order to ensure decorum and minimize interruptions. The moderator and the Chief Returning Officer reserve the right to step in should debate get out of hand or become personal at any point.
2 coin tosses have taken place prior to recording to determine speaking order. Noah will introduce his platform first and have the first opportunity to respond to the first question. Priority of response will alternate for each question thereafter. We ask that both candidates act courteously and allow their opponents the opportunity to respond in full, so both parties may have an equal chance to speak.
Alright, thank you everyone, and I'm going to extend a special thanks to the Muse crew for hosting this debate. My name is Noah Davis-Power, and I'm one of the two candidates for MUNSU Director of External Affairs. Our platform has been very results-oriented. We have a 3-pillar platform. Now the first is provincial pressure. Now we're going to make sure that the government in this time of fiscal crisis understands that they need to continue an investment in education to make sure that we have an investment in the future of the province. Now, a second piece of this is that we're going to make sure that the government knows that they're accountable for their provincial election promise last year. Now, that promise was to move away from the loans program and move towards a needs-based grant. Right now, we haven't seen any progression with that. That means we need a stronger voice to make sure the government of Newfoundland and Labrador understands that they need to buck up and hold themselves accountable. Secondly, we need a more transparent and accountable MUNSU. Throughout the past week, since the budget has been released, I've been giving a time update, but I'm going to say it's only been released since last Wednesday. This is obviously a severe issue, where it documents not only the budget, but meeting minutes, board meetings, and committee meeting minutes are very, very difficult to get, even if they exist. Now, I think that we need to make sure that students know where their money's going, how it's being used, and everything else that MUNSU is doing. They have a democratic right to know what's happening with their union. And thirdly, we're going to focus on a better MUN. So we need to fix some outdated policy. Like I said, our platform is very results-oriented. So through listening to students, we've seen that they have some certain things that need to be fixed. First off, we deal with smoking, parking, and we need to focus on a better MUN as a whole. Now, smoking regulations, students are being corralled. For parking, people are getting slapped with tickets all the time because there's not enough permits. So on March 12th and 13th, I'd hope to have your vote for Director of External Affairs.
Hi folks, my name is Candace Sims and I want to be the next MUNSU Director of External Affairs, Communications and Research. Over the past 2 years, first as my role as Arts Representative on the Board of Directors and currently as the Executive Director of Advocacy, I've gained quite a bit of experience working with students, representing student interests, and learning what it is that the members of Memorial University Students' Union want. My platform is very simple. I want to inform students, engage students, and take action for students. I want to inform students by making sure that all of the information that is necessary to become involved and engage with your students' union is readily available, whether that's coming into the office and meeting with your directors or accessing it through our website. I want to update the website and make it more accessible and user-friendly to our members. I also want to make sure that we're out talking to our members one-on-one. I want to have more mobile MUNSUs. I want to make sure that we are bringing MUNSU materials and MUNSU campaigns directly to the students who use them. I want to engage students. I want to make sure that students are feeling like it's your students' union, that you can interact with your students' union by giving positive feedback or negative feedback and having that incorporated into the direction of the union. We'll do this by having regular meetings with our residences, our clubs, societies, and resource centers, and having more open forums that are in more locations and more accessible to the students of Memorial. And finally, I want to take action on the issues that are most important to our members. I want to make sure that we're fighting for student rights when it comes to the upcoming municipal election, that all candidates are aware of issues that face students. I want to make sure that we're advocating for student interests on a university level, at a provincial level, and on a federal level. All of these are things that I already have experience with and will continue to be a strong voice for students in the coming year. So on March 12th and 13th, please vote Candace Sims for MUNSU Executive Director of External Affairs, Communications, and Research.
Well, we don't have jurisdiction over, and particularly with my platform, you can look at the smoking policy and the parking policy. Now, MUNSU doesn't have direct jurisdiction over these, right? Obviously, it's the administration of the campus as a whole. But the thing that MUNSU should be doing with regards to things that aren't in their explicit jurisdiction is that we need to be lobbying them more heavily. You can look at the smoking policy, for example, that it's getting narrower and narrower, where there's only 2 or 3 spots around campus that are being able for students to go to. So it's not that MUNSU can explicitly say, okay, here's some more spots to smoke, but we need to make sure the administration knows that there should be more places to smoke, and that students who do smoke shouldn't be treated like second-class students. Again, you look at the parking, we don't have express jurisdiction over the parking, but MUNSU as a whole should be advocating for more parking spaces and better permit organization.
That's a great response. I think we need to realize that the Students' Union's direct jurisdiction is over the services and campaigns that we can offer our members. What we don't have direct jurisdiction over is still something that we can control by having a strong student voice at the table. Currently, students sit on every major decision-making body at this university. We need to make sure that we still have well-informed students who are engaged with their constituents, that are at these seats, and that are presenting well-founded, well-researched motivations for actions that need to be taken. As well, provincially and federally, we might not have control over tuition freeze or whether or not there's federal support for the Aboriginal student education programs, but we need to make sure that we have well-founded arguments, and that when we go to these meetings, we have someone who has the experience and the knowledge to present valid discussions that can't be turned down and ignored.
Now, when it comes to something that expressly doesn't have anything to do with MUNSU, in my opinion, is the federal jurisdiction of education. Right now, as the federal government is organized, post-secondary education is strictly a provincial matter. Now, MUNSU has been in bed with the CFS. We are the crown jewel of the CFS. Right now, when it comes to this, MUNSU has no express control over it, but still is advocating and putting money and resources towards advocating something that not only Prime Minister Harper has denied, but Prime Minister Martin and Chrétien have also said no to. Opening up the ministry of a federal ministry of post-secondary education is simply infeasible, and it would cause as a money sink for the federal government, and that's simply why they're not going to do it.
I think what we need to realize is that we are not just representing students from our campus. It is our main priority, but we are stronger united. We have 13,000 voices at the Memorial St. John's campus, but we have 28,000 voices provincially through the Canadian Federation of Students, Newfoundland and Labrador. Nationally, we have over 600,000 voices that we can unite with, and it's a lot stronger than speaking with the voice of one. We need to realize that there are actually domains that federally that have a direct impact on our members. The PSSP program for supporting Aboriginal youth and Aboriginal education is a federal responsibility, as is research funding and the Canada Student Loans and Grants program. We need to make sure that we're uniting together to present a strong voice, not just within our campuses and provincially, but also across the nation. We've had immense successes provincially because we are united with 28,000 other students. This is why we were able to go to and speak with Minister Shea and the Minister of Finance and advocate for continued education freeze. And that has been successful in the past and will continue to be successful because we speak with so many voices. We are also able, through the CFS, to advocate for scales of economy. So all of the services we offer our members directly, such as the handbook and health and dental plans, those are all available because we're able to unite with so many other students across the country.
Okay, so when we talk about a united voice across Newfoundland and Labrador, are you forgetting the fact that one of the Kona campuses actually threatened to defederate last year. So clearly, when we're advocating for something, again, that doesn't directly affect all MUNS students, do you think that that has any impact when there are actually active campuses and voices out of this 28,000 that are currently threatening to defederate? And the only reason they didn't defederate was because of lawsuit threats from the CFS as they presented across the country.
I can't speak to the specifics of that. I am a member of the MUNS Students Union. I'm proud to be a member of the Canadian Federation of Students because the reason we have been able to have a tuition freeze and have the grants program and have the promises for further grants program is because we do belong to an organization that represents more than just one campus and more than just one group of students.
Thank you, candidates. Our next question follows up on that issue. The Canadian Federation of Students is a lobbying group that represents post-secondary student unions at both the provincial and federal level. As a local chapter of the Canadian Federation of Students, MUNSU members are required to pay dues to both the provincial and federal branches of the CFS, on top of MUNSU fees. How would you ensure that students are able to benefit from MUNSU's affiliation with the Canadian Federation of Students? Candace?
I would say that students at this campus are already benefiting from the association with the Canadian Federation of Students. We do so through the services we provide our members. We have a health and dental plan that is a very well-rounded plan, but is at a minimal cost to the students who use it. We also have economies of scale, not just the MUNSU t-shirts and the MUNSU water bottles that are presented every year at orientation in the handbooks. We have many clubs and societies and residence groups that make use of this. As well, being united provincially means that we can speak at a provincial level. When we go to government and we have our representatives there, we're speaking with every other campus of Memorial University as well as many of the colleges across the province and advocating for increased supports for students, whether that's continuing the tuition freeze, improving the grants program, or additionally supporting our institutions directly with infrastructure funding.
Thank you, Candace. Noah?
Okay, again, we're going to look at how exactly we're benefiting. So we can see in the past week, actually, the Muse printed a copy of, the most recent copy of the Muse had the CFS actively advocating for an issue that is very, very easily, arguably, not student-related, and that's the blood ban. So I don't think that the Canadian Federation of Students and the student dues that it demands from us throughout our tuition, I really don't think that most students on campus are actually going to see a benefit from that. When you look at it, what are we seeing from the CFS? Okay, health and dental, but you look at the costs that it's putting on students and the lack of results that we're getting from Ottawa being a federal organization, it simply doesn't make sense, and I think that we really need to reevaluate our relationship with this Canadian Federation of Students.
I think it's so important that we inform our members not just of the services and campaigns that the MUNS Students Union offers, but also of the services and campaigns that are available through being affiliated with the Canadian Federation of Students. We also need to recognize that a lot of our members aren't aware of how the Canadian Federation of Students is structured. It's actually driven from a local level up, and the locals are driven from a member level up. So we need to appreciate that any campaigns or initiatives undertaken by the Canadian Federation of Students have actually been voted on at annual general meetings by representatives from every single local who have been selected by their students.
You know, in your question response, you mentioned that we are united, we stand. You talked about a lot of other provincial levels and how we're uniting with other campuses across the province. So I don't see why we need to be on a federal scale when we're fighting for provincial matters with the tuition freeze and whatnot. When, again, you talk about uniting as a province, who's to say that we wouldn't be able to, as Newfoundland and Labrador, create a provincial form similar to the Canadian Federation of Students. And I think that would have a lot more impact locally, and that's where we're really going to see the effects, instead of sending bureaucrats to Ottawa to get outnumbered because we are Newfoundland and Labrador and we're going to have a population size difference.
I think it's important to note that while we do stand together provincially, there are also, as I mentioned in a previous answer, significant portions or significant issues that are under federal control that affect our members. The post-secondary student support program, which provides direct funding to Aboriginal students, that's under provincial or federal jurisdiction, as well as research funding to our institutions, and the Canada Student Loans and Grants Program, which every student who applies for a student loan is applicable for. We need to recognize that the Canadian Federation of Students is an organization that has been around for quite some time, is well respected, and has put in a lot of time informing members and engaging members and making sure they have the appropriate research undertaken so that they can take action on issues and be respected when they come into a room and they present a document.
The CFS is respected by everyone except every current federal government. They've listened to what they say, but do they really ever act on it? Frankly, if they were going to act on it, they would have done it by now. As you said, the Canadian Federation of Students has been around for a long time, and yet have we seen a new Ministry of Post-Secondary Education on a federal level? No, we haven't. Have we seen any increased transfers to the provinces? No, we haven't. Now you look at the Aboriginal student loans. That is not controlled by the Canadian Federation of Students, and that is directly advocated for by the Aboriginal students, their respective band councils. The band councils are the groups that are going to decide how the allocation of money to Aboriginal students goes, not the CFS.
Thank you, Noah. Candace?
I think there have been some instances in the past where the Students' Union Board of Directors should have engaged their members more, whether that was informing them of the rationale behind a decision or actually asking for their input in the decision to be made to support a particular movement. What we need to realize and what we need to help our members understand and to inform our members of is that we have a long-standing history of the students' movement and the labor movement being tied together. It's because our students are the future workers, and a lot of these strikes and these actions that have been taken place over the past few years are to ensure that there is adequate workplace support for those future workers and that there isn't two-tiering taking place. It's also to make sure that society as a whole is a better place. We work with our partners externally because we all have similar ideals and interests and have similar end goals, which is a better and more accessible system of education.
When it comes to MUNSU's involvement outside the community, you can look at MUN as a whole, as a small city within a city. We have our own health, we have our own food services, we have our own little form of government in the form of MUNSU and the MUNSU administration. But when it comes to supporting these strikes particularly, we have to look at how that's perceived. The union strikes especially are affiliated with the New Democrats as a whole. We see many of their members advocating. You can look at me right now wearing orange. It's because I didn't have another shirt to wear today. But I think that because we're representing not only more liberal views and more socialist views, we need to make sure that we're properly representing those of every political stripe. And by taking part, even off time, that we need to make sure we're appropriately representing all students within the Students' Union and make sure that we're going to take action appropriately when it comes to outside interference.
I do agree that, like I said, there are situations where the Students' Union Board should have gone out and engaged their members more to find a way to represent their views as well, and also to explain. It's why I want my platform is so simple: inform and engage and take action. I want to make sure that our members are informed of the decisions that we're making, or potential decisions, and that they're engaged in that process and giving us their feedback. It's so important that when we take actions like this, we make sure that we engage the entire board and the students they represent. It shouldn't be a top-down decision. It should be the students should be making the decision, and that's why my platform is based on returning the Students' Union to being your union.
So when it comes to the Metrobus strike, MUNSU and the CFS actually encouraged the strike because they said obviously the workers aren't being treated fairly, and albeit they were not. But at the same time, encouraging a strike on the only public transit system in the city, that obviously had a drastic effect on students' mobility to and from campus. So I think that by supporting them, we actually caused a detriment to many students.
MUNSU has taken great pains over the past few years to make efforts to more engage our membership. We've really started to push campaigns and initiatives such as Mobile MUNSU, which brings our board members and our executive to different areas of our campuses and with our materials and campaign documents to make sure that we're talking to members and having one-on-one conversations. That's part of my platform acknowledges that there hasn't been enough done to engage our membership. It's why I am so passionate about returning next year and making sure that we really do the best we can to get out and speak with every student on this campus and finding new and innovative ways for not just the executive but the board members in general to reach out to those folks.
You do say engage and inform a lot, and you say it shouldn't be a top-down decision, but for the past few years, including the current administration, which you're a part of, has been top-down. We see that many members are disengaged. You look at the current election and how the nominations came forward. 4 out of 5 positions were acclaimed. So how really engaged is MUNSU at this current time going to, how is it working? It's clearly having serious flaws in their methods. And like I said, but you're part of this administration. Would it continue?
I would argue that the Students' Union is still very much policy-driven. Anytime an issue comes up, it is brought forward for discussion at the appropriate committee, and then that recommendation is brought forward to the board. Our committees and our board are made up of students from a variety of backgrounds from all over campus. They don't just represent one side of the political spectrum or another. Further, we actually advocate and support with resources many student groups who do represent varying views. We have student groups from all three political parties that we support, and we encourage many more to form. It's one of my main priorities for the next year is making sure that students are aware of the ratification and recognition process for clubs and societies, and really endorsing that to our members and making sure that there is something on this campus for absolutely everyone.
MUNSU right now, as it is a haven for left-wing leaning members. If you're not part of if you're a part of MUNSU and you are anything but anti-Harperite, you're cast down. It doesn't make sense right now, if you look at it, that MUNSU is so partisan, even though it's not supposed to be. And actually, over the past week, I've been called out on my affiliation with an outside political organization. But at the same time, you look at the state of MUNSU right now, like I said, where it's anti-Harper, how can we really expect to move forward with anything? And like I said, there are conservative students on this campus. So by taking such an anti-conservative view, how are we equally representing them?
The Students' Union has had many meetings with members from all three political parties, both provincially and federally, over the past year. I've directly been involved with meetings with politicians from the whole entire political spectrum, and I think it's unfair to say that we're focusing on one political party or the other.
Again, back to the partisanship of MUNSU right now, if you look at and the CFS for that matter, if you look at the meeting schedules, you can see that a vast majority of the meetings are with left parties. A vast majority of the meetings are actually with New Democrat MPs and Liberal. Very few are with Conservative MPs. Now, whether or not that has to do with their inaction or the lack of requests from the Students' Union, well, that's really not for me to say, but it speaks for itself in which meetings are actually being attended.
I think it's vital that our members know just what it is their Students' Union is doing, what their Students' Union is, and the services that their fees are going to provide for. I was a part of the committee that made the decision a few weeks ago to put the budget up online, and it was later brought forward to the board level as well. I do think we need to have some more explanation attached with that budget, but I think it's a great first step. And part of my platform for the next year is to make sure that all of the documents, all of the meeting minutes, all of the budget information is online and easily accessible through a variety of means, whether that's a member coming into the office and asking for it or having a more easy and user-friendly website to use.
We've also had a great importance and stress on transparency at MUNSU. Before the budget was actually released, we went in and I actually asked to see the budget. I was told that it would be taken out of context and that the only way I would be able to see it was with a meeting with the finance director. Now, meeting minutes haven't been updated since 2011. Committee meeting minutes barely exist. Now, I think that all transparency, you know, we're dealing with $1.1 million was the number I saw in the budget. But it doesn't make sense that the minutes aren't available already. How difficult is it to actually put a document online, especially when it's on an existing website? I think that this shouldn't even be a part of a campaign policy, but it should already have been implemented years and years ago. This shouldn't be something that students have to fight for to see where their money is going. And if elected, I would make sure that all these documents would be readily available to the students.
There's no denying that the documents haven't been updated in quite some time. That's why one of my priorities as the Director of External Affairs, Communications and Research would be to make sure that we are adequately communicating information to our students. It's so important that we have a point of contact for these issues, and that's what the role of this position is, and I will make sure that that role continues.
The thing is about the transparency, you talk about that it's not there now. You are, again, on the current board, and it's been a question that I've been approached with many times is, what have you done to make sure that these documents should have been public? Like I said, I was told that I would take it out of context. It's a budget line. Anyone can read that the Breezeway is expected to lose $161,000. It's not that difficult to take out, it's very difficult to take out of context. So my question is, what have you done to make sure that these are transparent? What have you done to make sure that MUNSU has more accountability? That's the real question, is why hasn't the current administration, until our campaign has brought up the issue, that it's been a non-issue for the students' union?
The issue of informing our members has been something that the current executive and the current board has taken very seriously over the past year. Since last May, we've worked on ways of direct member contact to make sure that they were being informed properly, and also trying to figure out ways that we could update our website while it's still in the current state that it is. We do advocate for members to come to all of our meetings, whether it's a board meeting or a committee meeting, as well as we have a very open door policy. Anyone who wants any information can make a request and have it given to them.
So how do you explain open door when I have to have a meeting to see a budget, to see where my student dues are going? That doesn't make any sense when we talk about transparency and accountability, and you do say the term open door. I don't think that's very open door when I had to have the director of finance leaning over my shoulder to see exactly what I'm looking at. This, again, is a non-issue. It shouldn't be a question as to whether or not this should be online. It should be there and readily available, not with a meeting, not with a request for information, but easily accessible.
I think we need to realize that when it comes to the budget is just a prediction of what the year to come is going to look like. We need to, by meeting with the appropriate directors, we can actually give some context to the document. The budget is within the domain of the Director of Finance and Services, and that would be the appropriate person to meet with. For any of our other documents, I would welcome anyone who wants to look at board meetings or Academic Affairs Committee meeting minutes to come speak to me, but I certainly wouldn't delve into another portfolio when I wasn't the one directly responsible for it, and it wasn't my area of expertise.
So obviously the best predictor of future events are past ones. So this year the Breezeway is running at 161,000, last year was around the same mark, and the same thing for the third year before. So running a deficit, again, because it's operated by the students' union, that cost is being projected back onto the students with their student fees. Now, the thing is, where it's running such a high deficit, if you were to make an investment more so than you're already putting into it, and I believe two of the two current acclaim directors are saying that they want to put food services there. They want to add a more variety of alcohol. One way that we could fix it other than that, and probably after this year, after the last kick at the can, to see if we're going to be able to make money on it, is actually bring in a private investor to see if they can run it as a proper business, to make sure that the students who are running it or actually using it aren't going to be burdened with the cost of the deficit.
The Breezeway was projected to run a $161,000 deficit, but what we've been finding is because of the increased engagement with our members to find out what kind of activities they want to see at the Breezeway and what uses they want to see, we're looking at coming in under that deficit. And it's the points like this, it's the engagement of our membership, the ones who are going to be using the student space and the service, that we need to continue to put an emphasis on if we are going to move forward and bring the Breezeway back up to where it was once before. My platform is simple: engage students, find out what you want to see from your services, not just the Breezeway, but every other service. And I will continue to work with the Director of Finance and the Director of Student Life to do so and make sure that the Breezeway is a student space that we can be proud of.
So the thing is that clearly by the new suggestions from the current Director of Finance and the acclaimed candidate for Student Life, is that we know what the students want. They want new food and new beer. The thing is that food worked or failed once before. Why would it be any different now? Why do we need new beer? Why do we need a full-scale bar on campus when downtown St. John's has more bars than anywhere in North America packed on 2 streets? It doesn't make any sense that we're going to continue this deficit with these suggestions that are coming in. Like I said, we know what students want, but the question is, will they work?
I think the examples of the past few months and the success of the events that we've been having in the Breezeways over the past few months, in particular some of the concerts we've had since the winter semester began, have really indicated that taking membership feedback and taking action on that is going to work and is going to help the Breezeway. We've had sold out shows, we've had events where students have said, I want to see this next year, I want to continue to come to events like that. And incorporating feedback into our services is really what's going to make the difference. Privatizing the service is not going to help students. The Breezeway currently provides student jobs, it provides a space for student groups to organize. The way we need to save a service, and the way that any business will tell you to save a service, is to listen to your clients and listen to the feedback they have and listen to what they want to see.
Yes, they will tell you that, but at the same time, a business person will also not allow a company or a business to run a deficit of over $100,000 for a multitude of years. So they would also tell you that, yes, we need to listen to them, but we need to take suggestions that are going to work. And you talk about the student jobs that are there. There are very few student jobs there right now, and who's to say that one of the stipulations of privatizing the Breezeway wouldn't be to make sure that the students who are currently hired there be rehired in the privatized business. So that's an alternative. It's a feasible alternative that I'm sure they would tell you. They would say, as long as my job's safe and as long as we're making money, it doesn't matter. So I really think that the major problem is that the deficit that we keep running is, again, being projected right back onto students, and I think that the money that is going into this deficit could be used better elsewhere.
There's no denying that the Breezeway deficit is something that is going to be an item of concern for several years, but you're not going to get rid of a $100,000 deficit in 1 year. It's going to take steps. It's going to take membership engagement, research, and an actual business plan. And those are steps that we've already currently taken with the current executive. We've started to look into what would make a more feasible Breezeway, and we've started to implement those actions. It's not something that's going to be solved overnight. It is going to take time, and this is why the current executive and the acclaimed candidates want to put that time in to make sure that the Breezeway really is a place that is student-run, student-owned, and student-organized.
I really don't think there is going to be a tipping point where the Breezeway is, that we really need to think about closing it. Like I said, you don't need to close something to make it functional. You can simply privatize it. Now, by privatizing this, you're going to take the burden of this massive, massive deficit, and probably that's going to continue. So you can reduce the deficit a tiny bit. You're still going to have a 100,000 plus deficit, even if it's not close to the 200,000 mark. I don't think that the Breezeway needs to close. As Candace said, it's a great hangout spot. People have concerts down there all the time. Many groups on campus utilize the space effectively.
The Breezeway is something that has been around for quite some time. It's a staple at the university, and it's something that students are very proud to say. We have student-run, student-owned services, and the Breezeway is one of those services. I don't think it's a matter of closing the Breezeway. I think it really is a matter of informing ourselves and our members of what's happening at the Breezeway, and then engaging and taking action on that feedback. So I think it's important that we engage our members. It's not a personal decision when we look at groups for recognition or ratification. It really is strictly by the bylaws. And if there are concerns brought up at the Student Activities and Organizations Committee, they need to be clearly communicated to the group that has applied for ratification or recognition. As the Director of External Affairs, Communications and Research, I really do want to ensure that any communications exiting the Students' Union to our members and to outside organizations are as clear and contain as much information as possible, and really facilitate that two-way dialogue.
So again, you asked about how we would personally vote on this. I would vote yay. Over the recent weeks since this fiasco came up, I've been actually meeting as part of my director's position with LBGT-MUN, educating and moving forward with the acceptance that the GPS and their satellite organizations have. The reason why I would vote yes is because we need to set a flat standard, where MUNSU right now actually sponsor 2 Coors Light Breezeway parties, where the direct objectification of women, which was one of the main reasons that the GPS and satellites were actually told no. So it doesn't make any sense for MUNSU to preach one thing and then say another. We need to set a flat standard, and by setting the precedent that MUNSU has, I think that we really need to relook at the issue with the GPS and their satellites.
I think it's important to recognize that these decisions are made by a committee of members from all over the university. These meetings are open to not just board members, but students from across our campus. We need to recognize that there are going to be differing views, and that we need to also acknowledge that those concerns need to be communicated to the groups in question. I would personally be very open to, and have been in the past, working with any student group that wants to be recognized. I've been involved with meetings with members of the executive of the Greek Philanthropy Society, and we've encouraged them to continue to meet with us so that we can find a way that they can organize on campus, because I do truly believe that any student group who has an interest in working on campus can find a way to fit within the bylaws and address the concerns of the committee overseeing and work on our St. John's campus.
The bylaws that are available right now are written in such language that are so ambiguous that MUNSU and the administration are able to twist them to fit their needs at the time. With the GPS, you talk about the communication between the groups. Mr. Zach Morris, he's the president of Sigma Theta Pi, actually said he received a Facebook message. So you talk about communication right now from the current executive. Again, I don't think it makes any sense that A, they denied the ratification based on a hypocritical double standard that MUNSU is carrying right now, but B, to communicate in such an unprofessional manner, and in that message didn't even give some positive feedback as to say how they could move forward with the ratification of their group.
I think we're moving away from the issue of the portfolio and what we would do in the candidacy. I've acknowledged that there are issues with the communications at the Students' Union right now. It's why I've decided that I would like to stay another year, change portfolios, and address those issues with the executive and with the board. I think it's more important than ever that we really clarify the bylaw policies, and that's why one of the points in my portfolio or in my platform is to engage our members in the bylaw review, which has already begun.
When it comes to this exclusivity of each individual position on the executive, I really think that we need to break down the borders that are there right now. Who's to say that as Director of External Affairs you couldn't effectively internally communicate your views to the other executives? As an executive, you still have you can still make your own position known. It doesn't matter if you get voted down, but if you're actually advocating for the constituents that you're representing, which as an executive director you're representing the entirety, I think that that's where we really need to move, is not having these blocked positions on the executive, but actually having more held hand work together.
I think the current executive already does do much of that. It's the portfolios are really there for clarity and ease of identifying positions for our members and for the folks that we deal with. We already have forums where the executive engage in conversation and discussion, and as I said before, any meetings where issues of recognition and ratification come forward are open to everyone.
All right, thank you.
So Res is obviously a very large population that makes up the Memorial constituency, and because of that we have to be very aware that any decisions that the executive and the board makes are going to directly affect them, and they're going to affect Res students first. So when it comes to the laundry issue, and that's particularly at Burton's Pond right now, they have one washer working the last time I checked over there, and they have 2 dryers working. So it doesn't really make sense that the continued longevity problem, as we heard, is still there. When we're supposed to be advocating on behalf of them, we need to make sure that housing knows the real issues that are there. Now, when we allow students to directly work with housing, we've received complaints, or we've heard about, that they're simply dealing with a business that's looking to make money, not that's advocating for the rights and livelihood of the students. So I think that as external director, we should be more heavily advocating and working with the advocacy director right now to make sure that this problem is going to be solved, and be solved once and for all.
That's a great question. It's one that I already have first-hand experience dealing with as the Director of Advocacy. Currently, in regards to the laundry services, myself and the 3 residents representatives are working to come up with a business plan as well as research alternatives to present to the university, so that we do have the information and research and have engaged our membership as well for some feedback before we take action. There's a three-pronged approach needed before you take any sort of action, and it's research, mobilization, and advocacy work. We need to make sure that all of those facets are working together. As for security, we've already gotten a commitment from the university to incorporate more lighting, swipe card access, and emergency buttons into the renovation. These aren't things that are going to happen overnight. We had a meeting a month ago or 2 weeks ago, and they say something. It's not going to happen the next day. It's going to take some time. You have to recognize that there are infrastructure changes that need to be made, and that we are still strongly advocating for at the table. As for the renovations, MUNSU has also been very involved in making sure that students are as disadvantaged as little.
Open floor now?
The floor is now.
Fantastic. So like you said, the meeting was 2 weeks before. I've been talking with the presidents of many Burton's Pond residencies right now, and they say that it's been this continual problem the entire year. So they also say that the current directors, board-wise or executive, haven't been coming around. So how can we as executive directors, or yourself as executive director, be able to address the issue fully without actually going down there? Now, when it comes to, like I said, when it comes to these meetings 2 weeks before, or a month before, it doesn't make sense that it's being addressed a month before elections. That is fantastic effort for a platform beefing up. But I think that this particular issue needed to be dealt with when it first happened.
I'm going to disagree with your assessment of the work of the current executive. We have been dealing with this issue all year long. As soon as our residents' representatives began to bring it forward, we began advocating strongly for it. We actually did get 2 new washers placed in residence last semester by the university that were free of charge to students. Unfortunately, those were removed. The next step we took was to do a well-researched document to show the university that there are alternatives to the services they are currently using for laundry, and that there are options for campus-run services as well. We've heard from our members that that would be a better outcome for them, because we've been going to town hall meetings and going to speak with our residents' representatives and having them liaise with the constituents. As an executive director, it's not possible to get out every day and walk down to every possible campus group or community, but it's why we meet with them on fairly regular basis in forums that are open and available to us, and rely on the work of our board members to address those concerns as well.
Well, the forums that I've gone to are actually very poorly attended. The last one actually had 3 members there, so I don't imagine the residency ones are any better attended. It's not that we need to go down there every day or should go down there every day as part of MUNSU. But it doesn't make sense that we're only going down there a month before elections, 2 weeks before elections, trying to pander votes. It only makes sense that we're down there. What's the problem with going down there once a month or once every 2 weeks, going to dining hall for a breakfast and actually sitting down with the people who you're representing?
Like I said in my previous answer, we have been working on this issue for the entire year. We have been attending forums and working with resident students since the fall semester. And this isn't something that started anew in the winter semester. It's something that we saw as a problem and have been finding new and better ways to address as we've used various routes in the university. We appreciate that there is a lot of concern, and it's something that is a personal concern for all of us because our members are being disadvantaged. But you need to take the appropriate actions. One of those was to get the university to agree to putting laundry services or additional machines in their last semester. And the next step is that we are looking and researching alternatives to that solution by having our residents' representatives and other students on the board directly contact other institutions.
So I think we really need to look at the election process right now. You brought up a fantastic point. During the by-election, I believe the results were 2.9 and 3.7% of the student populations voted for both candidates. So obviously there's a clear sense of apathy among students. Now, it really comes to the question is, why are so many director positions being acclaimed? Now, in our campaign, we've seen that many of the current directors are actually actively campaigning against us. So, to such an extent that they're actually coming over on social media and blasting us and putting up posters. It doesn't make any sense that a student who hasn't had any political experience would actively get involved in this when they're going to be targeted by the political machine that has become MUNSU and the club that it's become. So if you're not a member, you're not going to move up.
I think a lot of the issue with the acclamations this year is that, as I've said on my platform, students need to be informed and engaged in their students' union. We need to make our students have a sense of pride and ownership in their students' union, and the only way to do that is to make sure that they know what the students' union is, that they know about the work that the students' union does, and that they are also actively engaged in providing suggestions for that work. It's one of the reasons why I think it's so important that we get out and speak with our students on a regular basis, going to monthly meetings of clubs and societies, having a survey tool or a more open form of communication on our website, so that it's not just the on-campus students that we're addressing, but also those students who aren't traditionally on campus.
You know, the surveys and forums are great, but like I said, I'm going to go right back to it. Why don't we go down? Why aren't any of the directors down at meal hall anytime throughout the week? You know, they can get, if they're feeding these students this food and saying it's okay for Chartwells to go down and provide this food, what's wrong? Why can't they go down, get a fantastic meal, and then actively participate in Res Life? That way they're going to learn what resident students are going through. You know, that would be a fantastic way to make sure that the students know, by meeting the executive and the board face to face, how they can get involved in MUNSU and what the directors are actually doing.
I'm not sure that your response addresses the question or the position entirely, but my platform is to inform and engage more students, which is why I do outline ways that we can do so, both with on-campus students and off-campus students, by meeting with them regularly, going down and speaking with our students, having more mobile MUNSUs, and having ways to engage students through the D2L portal and our website. I think it is important that we do one-on-one engagement, but we also have to appreciate that that isn't going to work for everyone, that in this day and age a lot of students don't even come to campus to pursue their studies. And those are so students that we also represent.
So how do you suggest that we address this apathy? You know, especially, and I'm sure it's been very vocal that, like I said, the machine that is MUNSU has been actively campaigning against us. I've run in provincial elections before and haven't faced the amount of scrutiny and frankly bullying that myself and my campaign team have received. So it doesn't make sense, again, for any student, even if they knew what MUNSU was about and what they were doing, because I certainly know many of my friends understand what the function of MUNSU is, but they don't want to put up with 2 weeks of campaigning where they're going to be targeted.
I agree with that point entirely. I think it is unfortunate that so many students feel intimidated by the process. It's one of the reasons why I want our membership and feedback on the bylaw and elections review, so that our members are the ones who are driving these processes and these regulations. I also think it's important that we really address the concerns that are presented with facts, so that when there is something that comes up that might be intimidating to a student, the appropriate director is addressing that with a factual response, so that students aren't being miscommunicated with, and that students who are maybe intimidated might realize that it's not a political machine, it's a union of representatives there to advocate for students' rights and interests and to provide services. As for, I guess, my campaign team, I think it's important to note that most of my supporters, my direct supporters, are people who have worked with me over the past year and have seen the quality of work and the dedication I have to the students' movement. Every person who is on my campaign team specifically, it has been cleared through the CRO and is following every MUNSU by-election and election policy that there is. I can't speak for students who aren't on my campaign team, unfortunately, but I trust that most of their reactions are because they've seen the quality of work that I produce. So over the past 2 years, I've become intimately involved in the students' movement. I was inspired to become involved with MUNSU because I did see the problems firsthand and through my interactions with other students that students on our campuses face. My experience over the 2 years speaks for itself. I've been advocating for student rights individually and in groups on our campus, as well as provincially and federally. I've met with administration and gone head to toe fighting for student rights and fighting that a student voice be heard. And my passion is unbounded. I believe so strongly in the work that the students' movement can do and can achieve and does achieve, that I want to continue to do this and continue to inspire other students to do the same. So on March 12th and 13th, I hope that students will see these views and come out and vote for Candace Sims.
I'm going to thank the Muse again for holding this debate. As we've seen from now and in past years, we see the state that MUNSU is in right now. We see that they're proclaiming fighting for students, they're fighting for that they're working with the CFS, that they're truly working for the right and particular interests of all the students. Well, I think right now that we need to change over in or actually to be able to express new ideas in MUNSU. So right now, I think that from the lack of transparency, the indifference between fighting with the CFS on a federal level, and actually the interesting approaches that MUNSU has taken for a better MUN, that I think I would be a refreshing new voice into what I've, including in this debate, described as the club that it has become MUNSU. So I thank you again, and I hope to have your consideration on March 12th and 13th for Noah Davis Power as the Director of MUNSU External Affairs.
Thanks everyone for watching today.
We would also like to thank both candidates for participating and remind everybody that you can vote either online at Memorial Self-Serve or on campus March 12th and 13th.
Be sure to check out the new issue of the Muse on newsstands every Thursday, and exclusive online content at themuse.ca.